Hello everyone, and welcome back to my series of Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady, and today I will be discussing which Chaos Space Marine Legion is the best for competitive play. After playing countless games in 8th against many different legions, and also being a competitive Chaos player myself, I have discovered which legions happen to work the best in competitive due to their unique legion traits, stratagems, and relics. So if you're a new player and you still haven't decided which legion you'd like to play for competitive, then this list can help you make your decision. And if you're a veteran tournament player, this might also help you out, so you don't have to do field tests like I did to figure out which legion is the strongest. In this list, I will only be including the legions that are in the 8th edition Chaos Space Marine Codex, and I will not include Death Guard or Thousand Suns. Those armies will be discussed when the rules are released for both of them. So for now, let's discuss which legion in the 8th edition Chaos Space Marine Codex is the strongest for competitive play. There are 8 different legions in this codex, so we will go over them starting from the least competitive and moving on to the most competitive in a list style. Coming in as the least competitive legion at number 8 is the Word Bearers. These guys are actually really cool, and if you want your thing to be summoning a bunch of demons, then this is the legion for you. But if you want a competitive legion that has a chance of winning a competitive tournament, then these guys aren't the best. Their tactic is very lackluster because it's a rule literally every Imperium space army has. Their legion trait is the equivalent of They Shall Know No Fear, meaning they can re-roll a failed morale check. This trait is okay, but very lackluster compared to some of the better traits. Their stratagem allows them to summon in demons more easily, but summoning demons isn't the same as it was in 7th. It's still fun, but not nearly as competitive as it once was, since you didn't have to pay for summoned units in 7th edition. Their relic is the equivalent to a Crozius Arcanum from an Imperium Chaplain, essentially allowing you to have your own chaplain in Chaos. Fluffy, but not very competitive. Coming in at the second least competitive legion, and at number 7, Emperor's Children. Emperor's Children's best unit is their unique unit, the Noise Marine. So a competitive list would have Noise Marines with some other stuff to support them. But the Emperor's Children's tactic is only good for close combat, essentially making their tactic almost useless since everything's going to be shooty. Their Legion trait is that they always fight first in close combat, which is great and all, but when all of your units are shooty and you don't have really any close combat ones, then it doesn't matter if you strike first or not because you aren't meant for close combat. So it's an army that is very fluffy again like the Word Bearers, but not competitive at all. You'd be better off running Noise Marines in one of the non-dedicated legions to get a more useful trait on them. The Emperor's Children's specific stratagem has the same problem as their trait. It's great for close combat, but awful for shooting, which is what your best units are going to be. Sure, you can make a close combat Emperor's Children army, but your best units won't benefit from anything, and melee isn't the best option when it comes to competitive, because your melee weapons are technically guns that only have a 1-inch range. Obviously, you usually take the longer range weapons so you can stay in a safe spot while still doing damage. There are many more reasons why shooting is better than close combat, but that's a whole nother topic for another video. So getting back to Emperor's Children, they are a shooting army that has all melee traits and rules. Even though they have access to one stratagem which allows a Slaanesh unit to fire twice, every legion has access to that, so you can't really say it's just a benefit to these guys. So because of all of this, Emperor's Children fall in line at number 7. The third least competitive list, coming in at number 6, the Renegade Chapters. This isn't really a chapter, and it's more or less just for homebrew chapters, but most of the time if you're using a homebrew chapter, you're going to use the rules for a real chapter anyways. There's no rule in the rulebook saying you can't have red painted Black Legion or Emperor's Children, so you can paint them whatever you want and use them as whatever legion you want. Getting back on topic though, the Renegade Chapters aren't the best. Their Legion trait is actually one of the best for melee Chaos Space Marine armies because they can advance and still charge, but other than that there's not really much going for them, and they aren't allowed to use Chaos Space Marine's best stratagem, Veterans of the Long War. So unless you wanted a completely melee force, this army isn't going to be that good for competitive, and even then you're better off going for a shooty Chaos Space Marine style. The fourth least competitive legion, coming in at number 5, the Iron Warriors. With no unique units, it comes down to the legion tactic, stratagem, and relic to decide their spot, and I think they fit nicely here because their trait is okay. It's not useless, it's just very situational. The relic is pretty good, giving their character a 2+ save, a 5+ feel no pain, and an extra wood, and it's pretty damn good on a Demon Prince. Their unique stratagem is a 6+ feel no pain for a unit for the rest of the phase, which is okay, but again, kind of situational, and in all honesty, I feel it's a waste of a command point on anything that doesn't have 10+ wounds. So because of all this situationalness, I feel like the 5th spot on this list is a good spot for the Iron Warriors. 5th least competitive legion, or the 4th best, depending on how you want to look at it, coming in at number 4 is Night Lords. A lot of people think this army is great, and to be fair, it is, but only in casual games. In games where your opponent is going to have 120 conscripts as their screen, stopping you from deep striking anywhere valuable and stopping you from charging anything valuable as a melee army, you basically have to try to chop through 120 wounds before you can start damaging the actual army. Now, in the off chance you're playing against non-cheap infantry spamming lists, Night Lords actually do very well. Their unique stratagem is pretty good in that it deters your opponent from wanting to shoot at your best unit, but there are better ones in this. The Night Lord's relic is a buffed up claw, which they will most likely use because warp talons are great in this army because of their tactic, and all the other things they can add to the combo, like the warlord trait that also takes 1 from the enemy leadership, stacking with the other Night Lord debuffs. This army being so centric on close combat though isn't the best, because again, close combat centric armies normally don't do well in competitive because they get shot down before they get anywhere near the enemy, especially in certain deployments like Hammer and Anvil where they can turtle up in a far back corner. Sure, deep striking stuff works sometimes, but normally they deep strike in to be focus fired since most of your army is no threat while they play catch up, and by the time your rest of your army gets up there, your deep striking units died, meaning you fought them with half of your army and then the other half, instead of just one giant force. So because of all these reasons, I feel like Night Lords fit into the number 4 spot on this list. Now it's time to get into the stronger of the legions. Starting with the 3rd best legion, World Eaters. I know I've been saying that melee based armies aren't the best, but in this case World Eaters kind of feel like how Black Templars do from my best Space Marine chapter list. In competitive, you're going to be using mostly shooty stuff, but you have access to Demon Princes that allow your stuff around it to reroll 1s and act as a deterrent from things charging you, since Demon Princes are actually pretty beastly in close combat, especially World Eater ones. So yes, it's a slightly more expensive version of a Captain reroll, but the power it has in close combat is phenomenal and definitely worth it. The World Eater trait gives the army +1 attack when they charge. This is great on characters, but like the Black Templars, it's kinda situational other than that. What brings this army up much higher is the access to the relics and the stratagems. The relic that they have access to makes this army really good, and that relic is the Brass Collar of Borecaster. This relic allows your character to attempt to deny an enemy spell. If they successfully deny that spell, then the Psyker who attempted to cast the spell suffers Perils of the Warp, meaning they take D3 mortal wounds, and if that kills them, they explode. This is great because it can stop some spells that are super good like Death Hex and Null Zone, and kills your opponent's Psykers while doing it. Combine this with their stratagem where they can deny a spell on a roll of a 4+, your opponent isn't ever going to get that big spell off. If I read it correctly, you can actually use the collar to attempt to deny the spell, and if you fail, you can then spend a command point to negate the effects of the spell on a 4+. And if you fail that, you can then use a command reroll to try to get that 4+ roll again, meaning you have 3 chances to deny that critical spell your opponent is trying to use. Right now, with the way the game is fleshing out, Psykers can sometimes straight up win you the game if your opponent has nothing to deny certain spells. But with World Eaters, they negate pretty much anything, while being anti-Psyker and all, it fits. So overall, World Eaters fall into the 3rd best spot because of their stratagems and relic. Not so much the Legion trait, even though it's still somewhat useful on their characters. Now we're getting into the top 2, and these 2 armies are pretty much interchangeable depending on the style of list you're trying to bring. Based off of playtesting, it's my personal opinion that Black Legion is the 2nd best Legion, and here's why. Black Legion's trait is arguably the best or 2nd best trait in the game. It's a +1 to every unit's leadership, and also allows your rapid fire weapons to change to assault weapons if you advance. When I play my Magnus Chaos list, I use Black Legion Cultists as my troops. Black Legion Cultists are the best in my opinion because I always use Autogun Cultists so I can make use of their rapid fire assault weapons. And the +1 leadership helps the Cultists who only have a leadership of 6. It's not a huge improvement, but it still helps. I also like to run 1 unit of 6 to 8 bikes. They are great for grabbing objectives because of the advanced assault, and they still get 3 shots at 24 inches, which is pretty good. And the unit also works well with Veterans of the Long War stratagem, which gives their wound rolls +1. So I normally use them for the first turn or 2 to grab objectives. Then I shove them in my opponent's face and usually annihilate a whole unit of infantry with them, as long as I use that stratagem. The relic Black Legion gets does mortal wounds to a vehicle, which is okay, but super situational since some lists don't take many vehicles. The stratagem they get is a copy-paste of the Ultramarine stratagem, where a unit can reroll ones, but if they are Marines, they can reroll all failed hits. It's okay, but you're not really going to be using any Space Marines in a Chaos Space Marine army. It sounds stupid, but it's the truth, at least if you want a highly competitive army that can beat anything. So anyways, Black Legion falls into the second spot. This brings us to the number 1 spot on the list, and the owner of that spot is Alpha Legion. Like I said in my list of which Space Marine chapter is the best, Alpha Legion shares the same trait as Raven Guard, who I placed high up on that list as well. The trait where they get -1 to hit them if they are more than 12 inches away is huge. Guard go from 50% chance to a 33% chance to hit, and same with Tau, and Orcs basically never hit you outside of close combat. This trait is super strong in the meta of gunline armies. If you have a gunline versus a gunline, but one gunline is -1 to hit, that gunline has a much better chance of surviving while still putting out damage. Alpha Legion is the only legion where I would bring a brigade for my army list, and that's because you can fit a lot of stuff that can make use of this trait. You can take cultists as troops for screening and obsec, you can take 3 Hellbrutes with twin last cannons and a missile launcher for your elites, 6 units of Havocs, each with 2 last cannons and 2 missile launchers, and 3 units of Bikers just to fill it out. All of these units benefit from the -1 to hit, so you can shove them back in some cover and watch your opponent cry as they have a hard time trying to kill one unit. Tuck your Devastators together in a ruin with a Chaos Lord in the middle of them, giving them rerolls of 1, and you're golden. You'll have a great advantage against most shooting armies, and you'll have a great advantage against close combat armies because you have enough DACA to kill pretty much anything you want in one turn. I don't even need to go over their stratagems or relics because their trait is just way too good. Don't get me wrong, it's not imbalanced, but it's really, really good. Alpha Legion isn't dedicated to any specific god either, so you can put a mark on any of your units depending on your strategy. Although I would always give every one of my units the Mark of Slaanesh because of the stratagem that allows a Slaanesh unit to fire all of its weapons for a second time that turn is amazing. So that's my list of which Chaos Space Marine Legion is the best for competitive. If you share any different opinions than I do, I would love to hear them down in the comments. I'm not perfect, so I could have made a mistake in my judgment. But I've played my Chaos Army as each of these legions a couple of times to test out what I think was the best, and this is what I've found. Unlike my Space Marine lists, I actually play Chaos Space Marines, so I've been able to personally play as these armies to test them. When for the Space Marines, I had to watch videos and do a lot of reading to come to my conclusion. Well anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Don't forget to comment down below if you have any suggestions or critiques for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy wargaming!